Hello, everybody. This is Shane from Shane's Books and Review. I hope you're having a wonderful day today, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about Stephen King's book, The Outsider. And yes, it will be the unabridged version. And let's go ahead and kick a timer here, somewhere. We'll just make it here and then go here. That timer will be for the spoilers. Yep, they're coming. Anyway, long of the short of the book is I used to be a huge Stephen King fanboy. I mean, quite personally, I think that if he had called me and asked me to run off and go do this and possibly be a portion of his book, I would have gone for it. This was years ago when I was in high school, and his writing was a lot different then than it is now. In some forums, I've seen people say that it's because of this, it's because of this, but quite frankly, let's just be upfront about it. As a person gets older and they get more life experience, what they're going to write is going to change regardless of what outside influences or inside influences they have going against them or for them. In the last two books of his that I have read, I've really just not cared for. There's something that's just missing. There used to be this magic with Stephen King, and I verified his suspicion. I went back and I reread one of his older books, one of the short stories he had about Roland, the gunslinger, and it had to do with whenever he was a kid. Uh, what was it? Well, I'll put the title up, but it was like Through the Eyes of the Dragon or something like that. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just me, that my perspective had changed, and maybe that's the reason why I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I wanted to make sure that I was indeed being fair about it. Does it have everything that makes it Stephen King-esque? It does. It has that little tinge of science fiction and horror. It has descriptions. It has large character development. And it has dialogue. A lot of dialogue. Some of it is internal, some of it not so much. What I'm trying to get at here is if you're looking for a book that's going to be on par with things like It or The Stand, you're not going to find it here. This isn't the book. Upon my second reading of this week, because I've read it twice now, because I just wanted to. I wanted to be, like I said, fair. I'm not burned out on the book or anything. It wasn't one of my favorites, and that's okay. I'm not going to browbeat Stephen King over it. There's no reason for it. Just because I didn't much care for this one doesn't mean that at its base level that it isn't a good book. It, in fact, is. It has a lot of things that a good book should have. It has a bit of misdirection, as usual, from Stephen King. It has good character development, strong characters, strong wills for the characters, and the characters are true to themselves in their dialogue and in their interactions with other people. Although, if I am to be honest with myself, you, and with Stephen King, if everybody was in the same room, if that was a possibility, I would have to say I think he was a little soft on some of his characters this time. Even though there was a lot of honesty with how the characters would portray themselves, I'm not one that goes for curse words in books if they're not needed. I've always had a very strong feeling about that. I mean, is it realistic for a priest to slam his hand in the door and then turn around and scream F bomb, F bomb, F bomb? No, it's not so much. Is it realistic for a priest to slam his hand in the door and say something to the effect of God bless, or not say anything at all and just take it in stride? It's the same thing with baddies. You know, if you have a really big bad character that's been around for millennia, or if you have somebody that's not been around for millennia or is in an incredibly bad situation, whenever they go through the Job transition of you've lost this, everything's falling apart, there's nothing left, and most people aren't going to be in the gee golly range. It's just the way it is. So with that being said, one of the main characters in the first part of the book that it follows, I felt like he was soft on that character. I don't think that character would have reacted much in some of the ways that he did. But that person wasn't the main character in the book, so I'm willing to give a pass. Here's my pass. It's not that I want to go soft on Stephen King. I treat everybody that I meet equally and with the same respect. I mean, until they burn a bridge with me, I'm open to dialogue, regardless of the person's background, what they've been through, as long as they are honest with me and they don't lie to me and they treat me with some modicum of respect. If I was in the same room with Stephen King about this book, I would ask him, why? Why were you soft on this one and not so soft on this one? There was definitive markers of Stephen King on the second person that something happens to. That was more true. I'm not sure if he was going to write a short story first and this got converted into another story, but the first portion of the book quite literally could stand on its own without the rest of the book. That's how much development went into the characters in the beginning. And we do follow most of these characters throughout, so it's not like they're garbage throwaway characters either. That's why I was upset about him not being hard, not being true with that one character. No, I'm not being hypocritical, and I'm not countermanding what I just said earlier about him being true to all characters. I did say that back there. There was a level of realism that one should have had that he didn't. I have gone on that rant and given you no spoilers whatsoever. Go me. Awesome. Anyway, moving on along. It is an enjoyable book. It really is, on multiple levels. Something that I really haven't seen from Stephen King before, and I'm sure, actually, I'm kind of positive he's done a book like this before, where it's detective type work and police trying to blah, 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 blah. But for some reason, this one, those characters are sticking with me. Is it in the same style of, let's say, Lincoln and Child? Or in the same style of Arthur Conan Doyle? Not so much. He's not copycatted, really. And if he has, he's done it so subtly that it seems like his own. I think that part of the reason why I had an issue with the book is the gritty level. Like Stephen King. Whenever I think of Stephen King's books, I think of dirty, noir, gritty type of a book. Something that's raw on its nerves. Something that is just waiting to just bark and bite or slash at you as soon as you start reading and you get past the introductions. Something that's going to keep you on your toes of suspense or mystery or, my God, this is so uncomfortable, I wish I could put it down. But I didn't really have that so much with this book. There are uncomfortable topics in this book. There's no question about that. So it is a bit raw in that regard of the topic, but I'm not sure if that was the reason why he danced or seemed to dance, or in my opinion seemed to dance around the topic and the people and their reactions. But anyway, it's really hard to do this. This is a duality statement that I'm getting ready to make. Although it has everything it needs to be a good book and a good read, highly entertaining with good character development and proper plot lines, with good explanations and cutoffs, not to mention wrap-ups of the stories that are inside of the book, I just was left feeling a little bit empty and not satisfied when I finished it. Would I recommend getting it? I would. Actually, I would. It's not like the book that he and his son wrote together or co-wrote, being Sleeping Beauties. That one, again, highly disappointed. And would I recommend reading that one? No, I wouldn't. And I hate to trash it, but I'm sure it was an excellent exercise in between him and his child. Personally, as a father, I would enjoy that kind of a thing myself. Teaching one of my kids something that I do, or seeing them learn it on their own, and then the two of us working together. Yeah, that would be incredible and fun, and yeah, I'm in. But as far as that Sleeping Beauties book goes, man, it misses the mark on so many different things. And the reason why it misses the mark on so many different things, I think, is the process they went through, where one would write part of it, one would write another, and then they would rewrite the other person's part a little bit, and so it's kind of like whenever you have a stone that you can polish, and you sand it down smooth, and then you get another sandpaper, and then you get another sandpaper, and then you get a rougher sandpaper instead of finer, and do it again, you lose the focus that you could have had on that stone. Back to the book we're talking about, The Outsider. How does all that have any kind of relevance to this book? Quite frankly, it does. It's not so much that he co-wrote it, but it had that same loss of focus, that loss of clarity of how a character would interact with another character in a horror type environment, in my humble opinion. But that's just it, that's my opinion. Now, if you agree or don't agree, I'm perfectly happy with whatever you think. But let me know about it down there in the description, because I'm curious to see what other people think as well. Not just Reddit, not just forums. I want to have an actual conversation. I want to see what people actually think about this. So talk to me. Tell me. I'll listen. I'll respond. Okay, so we've done it. Yay! All right. Now it's time for that spoiler clock to go away. And we're going to get into the meat and the bones of the book. So if you don't want to know the details, if you don't want it to be ruined, because indeed it would be ruined, then this is your time to stop watching. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Boom. It's actually under the video. This one does nothing. But for some reason, everybody wants to show that button. I don't know why I'm showing it, but it's down there. And once you click that, please don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. Now, for the rest of you that are going to stay here because you want to know. The story premises. There is, of course, a creature of some sort that is magical, mystical, and of the supernatural. And its strange ability this time has to do with rubbing itself with the fat of young children and staying young forever. Well, kind of. The way that it works is it will touch, poke, scratch, caress some individual, and then take their form. While they're off on some kind of vacation, clearly not anywhere near somewhere, it takes care of its pedophilial type urgings and eats some of the flesh from them and rubs the butter or fat like butter, whatever. Anyway, the point of it is it does some very disgusting stuff to young kids, and then sets up the person that's on vacation that it has doppelganged, and then goes into hibernation for a while. So there's the whole premises of the book. Not to be crude, but most of the times when you have a really good idea, it can be summed up in one sentence. So I'm not down talking it whenever I say that. Anyway, moving on along. Then you have the characters that are around the story. You have multiple victims of this creature that are accused of doing bad things to kids. You know, that might have been the reason why I didn't really care for this one that much. Because it does have all the check marks. It has all the hallmarks of something that would be good. But I have such a predispositioned hatred towards people that will do anything to a child. Apparently it's a creature that's been known for quite some time, as there were movies that were made in Mexico about it. El Cuco, something like that. It is up to the fated heroes that start out on the wrong side of where they should have been. Then they can't explain why they're on the wrong side. They don't even know the reasons why they were putting allegations against people to begin with, being the first person. The book opens in Flint City, Oklahoma. If you do a little bit of looking, you'll find something kind of neat. There's actually a restaurant by the name of Flint in Oklahoma City. Terry Maitland. I guess that's how you say his name? Maitland? Terry Maitland is a well-known coach for little boys. And I'm guessing fills all the roles like most coaches of younger kids do for like t-ball, softball, etc. And he's having a really good year this year. Everything seems to be on par. It looks like this might be the year where they get to do the big stuff. And Terry is the one that gets victimized by the creature, the outsider. In that victimization, there is a little boy. And Terry is arrested in front of his entire hometown during one of the final games. Leading up to that point where Terry was arrested, Ralph Anderson, being the lead police person, kind of, is the one that gets most of the focus later on. The DA and a couple of the other police boys, they're all accumulating evidence, or so they think, really. They're finding eyewitnesses collaborate a incredibly large time scale of yes, he was seen here, yes, he was seen here. When I was reading this, I want to give Stephen King some credit here because he actually elicited a response from me. It's not so much that I'm for the downtrodden or that I'm on a white horse or anything like that. That's not what this is about. But I was reading this book and I was seeing in my mind this guy that was actually a good guy preparing to be falsely accused for something that he hadn't done. And I saw how the system was going to break down and fail him. And then I saw after he was arrested, even though he had rock solid alibis and proof with video and proof with eyewitness accounts of where he was, and there was no way possible for him to be there, that things just continued to get further and further out of hand. Some people might think that that's not really possible. I'm here to tell you it is. So I watched as Terry starts to get steamrolled by the system. Things are there. There's evidence that matches, but it could have been fallible. It could have been not actual. It could have been that he was actually in two places at the same time. And Ralph was actually a good police officer. Instead of just accepting it for what it was and throwing the guy in the slammer, which he actually did do, but throwing him in the slammer and then slamming the bars and throwing away the key and forgetting about him, he starts to work the case a different direction. Let's prove his innocence instead. So he actually takes it upon himself to hire a private detective. His private detective reaches out to another person at Finders Keepers. I think her name was Holly. And Holly is really good at what she does, but that's where things really start to go awry. So we have a transitional point where the book goes from being about police and police work and actually good detective work as well, rolling into what we more think of as Stephen King being the horror side, or at least that's what I think of him. And Holly's our kind of transitional character for that. The book could have wrapped up quite literally right after his arraignment, after Terry's arraignment, whenever he got shot. He actually sacrificed himself for his family, if I remember correctly, jumped in front of a bullet, pushed his wife out of the way. So somebody that was actually an innocent, was a good person, had a good heart, good mind, good soul, good everything, ends up getting steamrolled by the system, the evidence trail that they had up to that point, although by this time Ralph was really fighting against the DA and the other boys to make sure that if there was a chance that he hadn't done it, which he was beginning to believe, then okay, let's get him out of this situation. But unfortunately, one of the kids of the victim's family lost his mind, lost his crap, and ended up killing Terry and shooting a bunch of other people. And with things that have been happening here lately, with our political climate, it's highly believable. So again, good writing. Now after this point, you would think that things would just drop off. That should have been the end of the book. And in a way, yeah, it could have been. Especially if he had just took the very last of the book and got rid of the rest of it and just tagged the end where the DA was saying, no, we would never have actually put him in jail over this. We wouldn't have kept him in jail. We would have, in fact, cleared him of all suspicions to this because clearly it was not him that did this because of, even though we thought we had evidence trail and it looked that way, this is the explanation for this, this is the explanation for this. And this is the other side of the evidence trail where it shows clearly he could not have been here. That really could have wrapped up the whole book. And I think I probably would have felt a little bit more satisfied maybe that way. I don't know. I didn't have a hard time wrapping my head around it. It doesn't have any major concepts or anything like that, but I'm really curious to see what other people think. Do they think that, yes, it had all the hallmarks and it should have been a really good book, but I felt empty? Or, oh my God, this was incredible, and you missed the point. So if I missed the point, help me out. Now, after Terry's death, there's another individual. In fact, he caresses the back of his neck and threatens him with cancer to get him to comply. And this is down in Texas. Another officer by the name of Jack Hodgkins. The outsider coerced Jack Hodgkins, which was kind of Ralph's opposite, like a rival, a business rival, I guess, in the law way. But anyway, coerced him to do something, and we find out what that was a little bit later. During the time period of Hodgkins doing the things that he was asked to do, and Ralph just trying to wrap his head around things and talking with Terry's widow, an investigation gets launched to find out if they can clear it. If they can clear Terry's name, because there's this van that seems to be the go-between thing. It seems to be the link between most of everything. It was stolen in New York. It was dropped off somewhere else. Van ended up in Ohio, where Terry visited with his father shortly before all this started happening in Flint. And on top of all that, there was just all these little things that needed to have check boxes for Ralph to finally say, you know what, no, Bill Summerson, which was the DA, this is wrong, it needs to stop. To give Bill Summerson some credit, towards the end of Terry's life, he had already started to swing the other direction and was questioning why exactly they hadn't questioned Terry before they even arrested him, and why they felt the need so very publicly to arrest him and make everything so well known and widely known. There was details about the crime that was hidden, but everybody knew that Terry was arrested for this disgusting act, and this disgusting act. Now, whenever Ralph reaches out and starts his own investigation, a PI gets a hold of Holly. Like I said, Holly was the main female character in my mind, regardless of any other females that were in there, because she was in one of Stephen King's other books. Ah, that's right. Holly Gibney? She came from Mr. Mercedes. I think that was her first appearance. Anyway, moving on along. Holly does her thing. So here we go. We've gone from one story about Terry, the things that happened before the day that Terry was arrested, the things that happened on the day that Terry was arrested, and then leading up to Terry's death. So there's story A. Story 2 is more the aftermath for Terry's widow. Her, the lawyer, Ralph, and a couple other characters finding out just exactly how Terry wasn't indeed in Flint City in Oklahoma on the day that that little kid was murdered. And then transition from police work and actual people's feelings on paper, etc., into story C. Story C is where things change. You go from that, like I was mentioning a while ago, from the police detective, gritty, blah, 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 blah work to the horror story. Now, at this time, when Holly is involved now, there are things that are happening in dreams. People are being warned off to not actually look into this. Don't do it. You will be burned to the ground from the outsider. And Holly finds all these coincidences. And she realizes quite quickly they're not coincidences, because she has a very open mind compared to other people around her. The outsider has been in other places. And at that point, she didn't realize it was the outsider. But there was a orderly that was working at the memory center where Terry's father was. And that individual had the almost exact same thing happen to him. So there's a little bit more police work. State troopers are involved. They go out and talk to a guy that has tattoos, like what was seen in dreams, etc. Belt buckles were being checked. And come to find out, this poor orderly had gone through the exact same thing that Terry had gone through, with one exception. Terry had gone to a conference and was on video asking a question at almost the exact same time that things would have been happening back in Flint City. The orderly didn't have that, so he ended up convicted, and before he could be put into jail, he killed himself. And then after he killed himself, that evidence that would have been found and was found in that basement of the orderly's mother would have done him in completely, because where his mother had constantly said, no, he was with me, and all the townspeople where she lived at had seen him. He had helped redo like flower beds, how people crossed the street, had drove around town in a truck that was very specifically unique to him. Everybody had seen him there. He was still being put through the ringer, much like Terry. So whenever Holly sees all these little coincidences added together, she remembers a movie that she has in her bag, which was what we mentioned previously about El Cucra. And so the stars of the movie was Mexican wrestlers. They would fight this thing, but it was like an ongoing series. It was like a cliffhanger series that we used to have in our westerns. But anyway, long of it all is, with part A and part B and her remembering that movie, then she compares that movie to the events that are happening now, and realizes that that movie was based with a small grain of truth and that it was probably this creature which was causing these problems. So she flies down and meets up with Ralph and everybody that's involved in the case and has everybody share the details that they have independently and everything that she's already found out. And the things that seem completely inconsequential, such as one person has to be in the same area as the next person for it to move to the next person, to the orderly. And then I believe that the other officer had a run-in with Terry that was being coerced. Would it have been any more enjoyable if it was instead of young innocent kids that were being tortured and bad things happening to them versus a adult? I would have been more accepting of the concept, but would it have got the same emotional response from me? No. And therein lies my respect for Stephen King, because he was being true to the characters, regardless of him choosing a really bad thing for this thing to do. It certainly made you choose a side real quick. So Holly and the gang, we'll call them the Flint City gang from this point forward. Holly and the Flint City gang, they have the meeting, and Holly presents her stuff and shows them shows part of the movie, and they start to postulate that maybe this could happen again, especially if things are non-conventional and there's something working against them in the forensics. So at least there was that open-mindedness to it. However, Ralph and Holly and a couple others end up going to Texas, where the two red shirts, as it were, get killed, and Ralph and Holly end up confronting the outsider after a lot of to-do. They do meet the outsider. They meet it in a cave. Defeated, kind of. One thing that stuck with me from the outsider was a paraphrase, or I'm going to paraphrase it, said, "Just exactly how many of me have you seen? Are there more?" The ending of the book, the DA, like I mentioned previously, ends up clearing Terry Maitland completely, disposes all the evidence to the press and tells them, no, this is why this is wrong, this is why this is wrong, and tries to correct the guy's image and give his widow and his kids a chance to actually live again. He decides that after the debacle, he's not going to rerun for office because he knew he'd never really be able to stand up to anybody in court again. Not that he wouldn't be able to physically, but because of all the errors that were made in Terry's case. And in the end scene, it's Holly, Ralph, and Ralph's wife. Holly's getting ready to take off again because case is closed, and does. And so then there's phone conversations in between him and Holly, because they seem to be kindred spirits. They're going to be support group for each other. And so that ends the story. Spoilers. Afterthoughts about it. I don't really want to repeat what I've already said previously about characters being true to each other. As you can see with the spoilers that I just listed here, the book was well wrote, and it had all those, like I said, all the check marks. It should have been a Hallmark book. It should have been something that I really got into in reading to see where it went. Was it any more deranged or bad or hard to read than parts of it? No. No, it wasn't. Because in it, there was a lot more graphical type things. But I understand that was a stylistic choice that Stephen King made during that time period, that he could make during that time period, that if he had made now, would have trashed him. But the topic itself is a lot more involved and a lot more cringy. But at the same time, I have to caution you, it's probably not going to be what you're expecting from Stephen King. There it is. You made it. Congratulations, and thank you, especially if you made it to the end of this rather lengthy video. You have increased the watch time. You're awesome. Thank you. If you happen to be new here and you want to join the family, please feel free. We would love to have you along with us. Look for that subscription thing down there somewhere. If you'd like to leave a comment, do it down there. I'd be happy to take a look at it, read it, and respond. If you saw anything in here that you think might help somebody make a decision one way or another, for if they would like to read this or not, please feel free to give it that thumbs up. Like it, share it, send it on out. And if you happen to find a good book in between now and the next video, please let me know about it down there in the description. I would love to read it along with you guys and start a conversation about that before we make a video. Again, today's book was The Outsider by Stephen King. Hope you enjoyed the review/overview. This has been Shane with Shane's Books and Review, and until next time, I'll see you in the next video.